me see, is my audio coming through here? Doesn't look like it is it? Let me just click on that and make sure that we've got it was now coming through strong there. Sorry about that little bit of a delay, everybody. How are you? SJ Anderson here. Welcome to this live stream. Sunday, new moon in Capricorn Sunday, right here in 2026, wild and crazy 2026. And so we're going to ride out the continued conversations about 2026 here today. And today in this video, I want to talk about Pluto in Aquarius and Neptune in Aries, and that combination specifically of Pluto in Aquarius and Neptune in Aries, and the ramifications of that combination geopolitically. Basically, this is mostly a mundane astrology video, although it will be relevant to our lives given we're here in reality. We're riding the waves of reality as it all unfolds, and so we're able to map it and then live our lives with this kind of knowledge of the mundane trigger. Plus, we'll do a tarot reading today, as I've been doing in these live streams, and so a lot of that will help us refer back to some of our own states about how we play things mentally, emotionally, etc. And you can see here the first slide I've got up here, the Bull of Excommunication, Hagia Sophia, from July 1054. And this is going to ground this conversation into some of the themes that I want to extrapolate upon and accentuate today. A lot of you may know this history, but effectively the Catholic Church reigned for a while, and the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church were not different until this period that historians call the Great Schism, about 1,000 years ago. All right, and effectively they disputed a number of things, but a lot of historians will say it was about culture and language and geography as a kind of root underlying cause, but there was a doctrinal difference or doctrinal differences, including notions of what the Holy Spirit is. Where does the Holy Spirit come from? And that's what I think is highly relevant as we talk about Pluto and Aquarius as a revolution of the structures of thought and the institutional structures, and how those structures that get brought into the Pluto and Aquarius transit are transformed into something new. And you see this with the split or the Great Schism of the Church, that it was about beliefs and ideas and doctrine, and that those differences of doctrine end up transforming the world effectively. The other layer here that I want to point out is that you have the co-presence of Saturn and Neptune in Aries. Do you see this? So it's not just Neptune in Aries with Pluto and Aquarius, it's Saturn came there as well. And look where Saturn is, 1 degrees. So everybody keep in mind that Saturn and Neptune conjoin at 0 degrees of Aries in less than a month, or I guess a little over a month, on the 20th of February 2026. So we're T minus 32 days, or 33 days actually, out from this great conjunction of Neptune and Saturn in Aries. But you see there's resonances in this chart of the co-presence, and all that means is that two planets are in the same sign. So a conjunction is always a co-presence. A co-presence doesn't always mean a conjunction, but you have a co-presence like you have starting in February for us in 2026. And I think the Aries side of this moment back in 1054 is one to consider, because Aries is breaking things. It's breaking. So you have what existed, and the Aries energy comes to shatter that and to break it open. And this is where I think you get the idea of splitting or schism. It's very much an Aries connected topic, or a Mars archetype, or of the Mars archetype. And so what we're trying to then grapple with symbolically here, and then we'll come later in this video to apply it to our current context, is how are we transforming our doctrines? How are we letting the ideas maybe drive transformation? And then at the same time, we may be breaking out of the idea sets and the foundational structures that we take into 2026 and beyond. And keep in mind, Pluto is in Aquarius and Neptune will be in Aries together until 2039, when Neptune finally leaves Aries. I believe it's 2039. It's 2038 or 2039, but I'm pretty sure it's 2039. So it's a long time, guys. I mean, we're just settling in to a ride here for about 14 years of Pluto in Aquarius plus Neptune in Aries. And so it's not only 2026. This is a big ride we're on for a big chunk of a lot of our lives, of transforming the structures with new, fresh ideas and breaking things into maybe two, or splitting things into new worlds, or the births of new worlds. The Eastern Orthodox plus Catholic, those two things existing together, that's birthed anew. in 1054 as this great schism happens. And this is when the bull of excommunication was placed at the altar of the Hagia Sophia. And they use that event as the symbolic moment of that breakage more than other events, okay? So we're going to keep going here, and I think what I'm going to do next, because we've been doing this in these videos, and I'm going to do it again here, is we're going to get our first tarot card for today to just try to ground into some of the tarology, bringing in tarot symbolism so we can get other symbols. You know, our little left brains aren't the only way to control reality. In fact, you know, they say you tell God what you think you want, and then God laughs. And the tarot is a sort of in deference to that notion. So let me just get these cards. You know, universe, guide us. What do we need to know here for this Aquarian Aries moment? Pluto in Aquarius, Neptune in Aries over the next 13 years, and greatly accentuated here in February 2026. All right, got the 3 cards. Let me place the first one here on to the stage so we can begin talking about it. And yeah, I want to just say that, you know, again, we're on the cusp of this. Pluto's been in Aquarius since 2023. Neptune was in Aquarius last summer. So the beginnings of this dance have already been in our reality. But, you know, the thing about this year is that, you know, Pluto and Neptune actually make an aspect in July. They will perfect a sextile. So we're going to get an exact degree-based aspect of these two energies this year, which may mean that 2026 is uniquely potent in terms of a trigger. So here's the first card. And this is the 9 of Pentacles. So this is going to be our first card here. I love this card in the context of the earth element stuff we've been dealing with here already in 2026 with the heavy Capricorn pile-up energy, which is about and evokes material build-outs and material ardor to make our lives better through getting involved with our work ethic to kind of actualize our goals in the material form, which is this human expression. This tarot card is a great card. You know, it's a celebratory card. It's actually one of the best cards in the deck for material gain. And, you know, I hope when I see this, I just hope you guys have started 2026 with some material gain, and you've been feeling that Capricorn power, and you've deployed it in ways that are productive, and you're starting to maybe see some fruits here, especially today as that new moon hits. This is also the middle degrees of Virgo, and we have a cycle of eclipses through Virgo. I believe, and let me get that exact degree up, but I believe this is the decan, or the 10 degrees of Virgo, where the eclipse will happen in March, the 3 March eclipse in Virgo. Let me just give me a second here to confirm that, and while I'm loading up that date, I'm pretty sure it is, but I don't want to say, oh, this is telling us prepare for the Virgo lunar eclipse on 3 March that Mercury retrograde is happening. I don't want to claim that if that isn't true. And let me see here. I'll come to some. Okay, I see this comment. I'm gonna just stop right now. I'm gonna pull this comment because I want to answer it. Usually, I haven't been doing comments here at all until the end, and I won't answer another one here. But we've got a comment from someone saying practicing astrology is a sin in the Bible. Just saying, listen, I completely repudiate that. You know, astrologers are all over the Bible. In fact, there's something called astrotheology, where a lot of people believe the Bible and the stories of the Bible are actually astrological in terms of the, you know, mythopoetics of the astrology. You have the sun at the center. You have 12 zodiac signs that the sun moves through a year. And, you know, there's, I think, some good evidence that we have astrotheological basis for the Christian symbolism, meaning that it is astrological at its core. So, you know, 1 and 2, you know, and this is a good point because astrology is just one node of practice. You know, it's one truth mechanism. All right. I, as an astrologer, as a practicing astrologer, am very quick to toss astrology out and deploy other tools for well-being, other spiritual tools and technologies that are useful in our lives to bring us satisfaction. I mean, ultimately, the goal is satisfaction in our lives. All right. And I don't think, it's like Buddhism, they say it's not incompatible with anything, or there's certain philosophies or spiritual practices like meditation. If you just sit and breathe, how can that be incompatible with anything? Astrology is simply the measurements of the heavens, and then we just reflect on those measurements and say, what might these measurements mean for our lives, and that's compatible with every belief system, is my view. I don't think it's dogmatic. At least the kind of astrology I practice would be a non-dogmatic, highly interfaceable set of queries that are triggered by the measurements of the heavens. So anyhow, thanks for that comment, which I know is probably, you were maybe not wanting me to say that, but it's important because we're talking about religion here, and the three wise men looked up in the heavens and then they went to find Jesus, so the Bible says. But let me get the date of this eclipse up and the degree of this eclipse. It's the 3rd March eclipse at 12 degrees exactly. So this first card on the tarot pole is telling us, hey, your eclipse cycle through Virgo, 2 of them last year. This is the first position, so maybe the recent past. What's going on in Virgo? Maybe there's something here of like, we need to think about the Virgo context of this moment, because that 3 March eclipse happens within the month of Saturn and Neptune conjoining and being co-present in Aries. And so this whole conversation we've already been having today about kind of the breakage that can come when we transform our belief sets, Pluto in Aquarius and Neptune in Aries. This context for our version this winter or summer down under includes a cycle of eclipses through Virgo. So keep that in mind, guys, and just go back up to your ephemeris and put your chart up. Where is Virgo? What's been fatedly triggered or transformed around those house topics for you in 2025? And then get ready, because we have another dose of that in 2026 here very, very, very soon. So, okay, let's come back to the next slide. And I want to just note here what this great schism was and just read a little bit more about it. The split in Christianity established a separation between the Orthodox churches in the East and the Roman Catholic churches in the West. And a permanent separation was the thing I wanted to note here between the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church, even though there's been some detente, or that's the wrong pronunciation for that, but some communication in the last century where they're on better terms, they're still divided. And that's something that I want to key us in here with Pluto and Aquarius, because Aquarius is a foundation laying sign. It's Saturn ruled. And it means that those are things that last a long time. Anytime Aquarius is triggered, you're triggering topics or ideas that can potentially last for a long time. And then you say, well, Pluto's a very slow-moving dwarf planet. Neptune is the slowest moving of the planets, astronomical planets. So these are very slow-moving energies that I think we have to be open to this year, things being triggered that may last for thousands of years like this. And so this is why I wanted to put this slide up, because we're living in a time, a very, very special time, where the emergences that we get to live through very likely are going to transform all of reality for decades or centuries to come. And so it's quite exciting. And you'll see how that's relevant later, because I'm going to talk about a few other news stories I've seen recently that I think are the rumblings of what this may become. And so we're living in a quite exciting time. And I want to just add this next slide to the stage, which is just the dates. The last time, you can just search in ephemeris, Pluto and Aquarius, Neptune and Aries. When were they in those two signs in the history? Our history, 7 May 1042 until 19 February 1057. So this is the period that we've been looking at with the Great Schism and that symbolic moment of the excommunication that a lot of people give the Great Schism's completion or beginning. They assign it to that moment. You have then 14 May 1533 up until 27 February 1548. And that is again interesting along the lines of the themes we've been talking about, guys, because we're back to religion now. And I see there's some comments about religion. And of course, I answered that comment earlier and spoke to that a little bit. So I just want to be clear, I'm not trying to offend anybody's religious beliefs, and I don't think astrology needs to do that at all. I'm examining this from more of a perspective of the historical manifestations of these energies in our history, and then trying to extract some theme so that we can maybe get prepared for what we're living through. I don't want to attack anybody's religion, okay? Let me just be very, very clear about that. And again, my belief is that astrology is completely compatible, because all we're doing is measuring and saying, what might those measurements mean? And All right. So just know that there's the dates, and here's the dates of our time. And I was right. It's 2039 is the moment that Neptune leaves Aries. Pluto is still in Aquarius in 2039, but we're living through a 30 March 2025 until 23 March 2039. That's how these energies arrive to us here and now, and the timeline that we're on. And the next event I want to examine is something called the Act of Supremacy, which was passed in England, in Westminster, in 1534 on 3 November. And what this is the English Reformation. This is the time that it was determined that the king would become the head of the religious institution called the Church of England, and that king was the final authority of that church. Whereas up until this time, the Pope in Rome had been considered the final authority, and there was, of course, again, a dispute over doctrine. Who is the final authority? A dispute over doctrine. Can divorce happen? You know, the king wanted to be remarried. And I don't want to go into the technicalities of that too much. I probably have already misspoke about those technicalities, but just knowing it splits around belief. And because those splits are so deep, Aquarius, right, air sign belief, and deep Saturn, those splits are so deep that you have to create and birth something new. And that's the Aries energy. So it's Aries, Aquarius, deep doctrinal transformation, Pluto and Aquarius, and then Neptune. I think Neptune and Aries, and I think this is another side of it, is that you almost get the opportunity to do actions with Neptune and Aries that you couldn't have thought of before the arrival of Neptune and Aries, because Neptune can extend the realm of what is possible. It's in the imagination, Neptune. So you get these very imaginative ways to act. And of course this was where, you know, you have advisors saying, just create your own church, you're now the new Pope. That's a Neptunian model for Mars, for the martial energy of Aries, because you're kind of inventing things with the imagination. And so again, this chart's quite interesting because you've got Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries, right where it will meet Saturn in 33 days from the time I record this on the 20th of February 2026. So you're activating those early degrees of Aries. We saw in the chart of the Bull of Excommunication, was it Saturn at 1 degrees of, let me just put that back up and just so I don't misspeak, Saturn at 1 degrees of Aries, and then you have in the chart of the Act of Supremacy of the Parliament, which gave the king the supremacy over the Church of England, 0 degrees of Aries. And I think it tells us something too about how those early degrees of the zodiac with these long-term planets hitting those degrees can be the triggering moment. And we get that now in 2026, and we had some of that last year, and we'll continue, you know, in the next year or two with hits quite locally in Aries. Okay, let me just keep going here, and I want to come to this other point. I'm going to pull the second tarot card here in a second, but keep in mind this week, guys, part of why I wanted to do this live stream was that this week we shift into the Aquarian. So just this week, and we've got 4 conjunctions to Pluto with these 4 faster moving local triggers to Pluto and Aquarius. That is about to happen over the next set of days. And so if there ever was a week in 2026 where the Pluto and Aquarius story will arrive and show itself and be delivered to us, it's this week that we are on the cusp of. And so that's why I was like, okay, I got to look into Pluto Aquarius. Let's see. And then there's 2 news stories that have come out over the last 24 hours that synchronistically emerged to deliver the fullness of this talk, which we're about to get to. But just know it's Venus conjoining Pluto, Mercury conjoining Pluto, the Sun conjoining Pluto, and then Mars conjoining Pluto, all within a 7-day period. And I'm not going to read those exact dates. I just will say it again. Look for this week. What will happen this week that's about transforming the beliefs, the Pluto and Aquarius? One side of it is definitely you say, I believe this, and I don't care what you tell me you believe. I'm going to believe this, and I'm going to let that drive my reality. And so let's see what unfolds this week. Let's see what unfolds. But this is where I will layer in just some of the astrology that may be relevant to your personal life. I definitely think you want to be innovative, new, fresh with how you think, particularly this week. And everybody gets this in an area of your chart. But please embrace some new and fresh ideas. You know, one of my favorite versions of this, and this may be more Piscean, where you have Saturn, but I love the William Burroughs cut-up fact, I have a whole article about that was published in an astrology journal. I can't think of the name right now, but you just chop 2 paragraphs, you chop it vertical, a page, and then you remix it. And there's ways and techniques to deliberately create new ideas, and that's one of them. But look to do some of that this week. If something comes into your purview this week, some kind of new fresh concept, give it some attention. Just knowing that there's an Aquarian trigger, a Pluto and Aquarius all week this week, okay? So, all right, let me, I think, get the... no, let's do the next slide, and then we'll get the second card, because this is the introduction to the rest of this talk, which is here in 2026, the Pluto and Aquarius trigger and the theme of transforming through new, fresh concepts and ideas, it will remain most of this year. Look what happens in July, so-called Barbeau's basket. It's just the moment that you have the peak application of all of these modern outer planets, and Pluto's in Aquarius opposing Jupiter. That perfects in July. Neptune perfects the sextile to Pluto in July. Uranus perfects the trine to Pluto and Aquarius in July. So all year, it's not just this week, it's that we're building to this moment in the summer, which again is a peak moment of everything we've described here today. Innovative transformation of the idea set, and that propulses us into actions we couldn't have even imagined. But now that they're here, and we get to have these new imaginative actions to reflect and implement the transformation of our idea sets. And okay, now I'm going to pull the second tarot card. Let's just throw it out here, and let's get it add to the stage. No, okay, let me remove this first. I promise I'll get used to this at some point, and this will go smoother than it's been. But all right, the second card in today's tarot reading for this live stream is, I had it up here, is this one. It's another earth element card, and in fact, this is the final card in the deck. That is very interesting. This is depending on how you number the deck, but in the Crowley Thoth Tarot, he numbers this card as the final card, the Page of Pentacles, the 78th card in the deck. I use that numeration. But this is so cool because it is the transition, right? If it's the final card, we're going to then now go back to the first card, which would be the Fool. So you've got this final moment. It's again Virgo in my correspondence system. The pages are the mutable signs, and so it's a mutable earth here. Again, we're back to Virgo. So I just, I'm throwing out all this mundane conversation. What is Virgo? It's paying attention to the details of the physical body and to the details of the environment. Capricorn may be more hard work to initiate bigger changes. Virgo is maybe in the aftermath of that, you come and study the particularities. This would be like the details of a budget. You're counting pennies, you are getting coupons out of the newspaper. You see this, that might be more of an anachronism. I don't know how many people are doing that these days, but even 20, 30 years ago, people would collect coupons, and they're really going into the details of pricing to then acquire the sustenance that they're going to put in their kitchens. And so I think about it as health. The body is so important. The ingredients of the foods that we eat are so important. That's all Virgo. Sometimes people say it is a more anxious energy or obsessive or, this type of thing. But the truth is that can be very useful. I mean, it's very important to pay attention to the details of how we're treating our body. And it's not always fun, but this is very much a Virgoan concept. And so the reason why I'm going off here on the Virgo archetype is we've got 2 cards that are indicating Virgo. We've got a double Virgo communication to us today from the tarot. And so I think, it behooves me to talk about it more in depth here, setting aside everything else we've gone into, because we have an eclipse there, 3 March. And, so anyhow, just, I'm going to come off of this now, but I mean, the short summary is pay attention to some of the details of your physicality here, okay, over the next month. And maybe you're going to clean some of that up or get yourself healthier because you've read the label effectively. That would be a Virgoan method. Read the label, and then you see, oh, it has that thing in it. I don't want that thing. And you buy another product, and it's the clean product, right? These are the kind of mentalities that I think can win the day here, according to this tarot reading for you over the next little bit. So, okay, let me come back to the next slide, and we're going to continue here. Now we're into some of the stories that I've seen over the last 24 hours that I started researching this topic over the last few days because I knew I wanted to talk about it today. And then I see two stories that emerged that fit exactly what I think are the themes of what we've been describing. So this one just came out, and it was the apostolic churches in the Holy Land essentially call out Protestantism and Christian Zionism. And this group, patriarchs and heads of the churches in Jerusalem, is a group of churches, and it's many denominations. So it's not just Orthodox, there's Catholics, there are even Protestants that are in the Holy Land in Jerusalem. And they basically said, hey, Christian Zionism is something that we don't think matches with the biblical teachings, the Holy Scriptures. And you can read their statement. But, you know, the reason why it's synchronistic is that I'm just reading about two examples with these same transits, Pluto and Aquarius and Neptune and Aries, about Christian church doctrinal dispute. And then this emerges. And so I just think it's important, beyond what these churches are going to say or what kind of doctrinal splits may happen here in 2026, we do know that there are major differences of belief around, you know, what's happening in Palestine and in the Middle East, right? And it's relevant to the Iran events that just happened this last week that were front and center, right? They're like, we're going to bomb Iran. And then now they're not doing it. But a lot of what undergirds the rationale for that, and then you talk about domestic American politics, and now we're getting into we're getting into Uranus and Gemini civil war and Neptune and Aries civil war triggers in America, which really isn't the subject of this talk, but it relates to the idea of doctrinal differences of the mind, Pluto and Aquarius, Neptune and Aries, which is that split a lot of the body politic in America. You know, what's happening in Palestine over the last 2 years, which has been a Pluto and Aquarius moment. Remember, Pluto comes into Aquarius in March 2023, before these recent events in Palestine triggered in October. But that has been quite divisive. There have been political units have been split repeatedly around this issue. You know, the so-called left or the so-called Democratic Party split along the lines of beliefs around what's happening in Palestine and the politics of it. Similar on the right, split around this issue. And now you see churches here splitting around this issue in terms of doctrine. So, you know, is this something that's going to last 1,000 years? Maybe. I mean, maybe there will be, you know, it certainly is the part of the earth that it's so charged, where people have so much placed on this area of the earth, because you have these three major religions that all see Jerusalem as their holy city. So anyhow, I guess what I'm saying is I think the Middle East stuff, depending on how this goes, is a big candidate for laying a new foundation that can be transforming sort of everything we have known up until this point around that region and the beliefs around that region and all of it. And I know this is kind of general. I don't want to get into all the specifics around it just because people get triggered. I'm not even going to read the comments because I'm sure people want me to say certain things or not say other things about it. But let me keep going. I'm going to move off this story. No more religious stuff, explicitly religious stuff, all right? So some of you that maybe were disappointed in that, now we're going to shift beyond that. This is the next story that came out in the last 24 hours. And this was from the Times and the Sunday Times, the British newspaper. A former analyst at the central bank has urged Governor Andrew Bailey to put contingencies in place to prevent collapse if alien life is confirmed. This is the most conservative, respected newspaper in Britain, all right? And that they would have this, that they would publish this and take it seriously is very telling in my view. And I think, you know, all of us astrologers are like, hey, 2026 is a huge year. Unprecedented transits that haven't happened in thousands of years are arriving now. Sometimes I think that discourse is a little bit overplayed because technically every moment of time has never happened astrologically. So it's really easy to say, you can say it about every moment. This has never happened. This has never happened. That said, you know, it's definitely multiple cycles that are indicating great upheaval and change. If you look at the cycles individually, are all aligning this year. And I do think that there is something to this idea that we're living in a special year and special time, you know, and it's not just the idea that the ephemeris is unique, but it's also the symbology of what's happening this year, with Aries being the initiation energy. That alone is very important to pay attention to. in terms of ascribing to this year notions of fresh and new breakthrough, all right? But look at this, and then of course you see the memes of Aquarius. Ever since I've been practicing astrology, it's always common when Aquarius is memed, it's aliens. They show little green men or they show the grays, and it's like, this is Aquarius. It's just the basic signology, you know. So you got Pluto in Aquarius, you've got all these triggers in Aquarius, you've got this building all year into this summer moment where there's these perfected aspects to Pluto in Aquarius, and if disclosure or something like disclosure were to emerge, and by the way, what that means is just, I guess, governments admitting that so-called aliens, I say so-called because who knows what they are. I'm kind of more of a Jacques Vallée person where I think it's interdimensional or it's something else, that it's not quite aliens as such. But either way, I mean, here's the Sunday Times, the London Times, you know, and the Sunday Times saying, here we go. Now it's in the discourse, right? And the other thing, and this is the next slide, is that this movie comes out on June 12th this year, right as all of those aspects are applying to Pluto, those outer planet aspects, Jupiter opposite, Uranus trining from Gemini, Neptune in Aries, sextiling. And then Steven Spielberg's picture Disclosure Day comes out, Disclosure Day, and there's a trailer out. It's a really creepy trailer. I mean, I watched this thing and there's a scene in the trailer where Emily Blunt's character is like, she can't talk, and she's making these weird sounds, almost like communicating in some sort of Morse code with her clicking sounds of her mouth, trying to articulate things. It's a really, really weird trailer. And, you know, maybe this is part of themes of disclosure that are happening here in 2026. That, and this is where I want to take it back to the beginning of this talk, and we talked about the Great Schism of 1054 and then the Protestant Reformation in what was it, 1530? Let me get it. I think it was 1538. Let me just get the. I don't like to be inaccurate. It's 1534, and it is 1054 and 1534, where you have the same long-term cycle, planets Neptune and Aries and Pluto and Aquarius in both of these cases. And so when we say, well, how does disclosure relate to that? How might disclosure relate to that? Well, it's certainly a new doctrinal idea. I mean, if there is some kind of more formalized disclosure, I mean, no doubt that's going to affect religious belief and doctrine. I mean, the religions would have to either agree that it's real and then change their doctrines around it. And now we're already at a level of these two events that we've looked at, but we're even way beyond that, because this would invalidate like all religions and all history, right? It's not just the Christian religion that's only been around for 2,000 years. I mean, this is on such a level of revolutionary idea set or doctrinal transformation that it dwarfs really anything that would have ever come for many, many thousands of years. One. Two is that, I think, I forgot what I was going to say for two, but just know this would be a profound trigger with Pluto and Aquarius of transforming the doctrines of our moment. The concern about it would be, what are the actions that then are implied? You know, what would this mean for governments? And that's where I think when you go into this story from the Sunday Times and the London Times, you are talking about collapse. When you read what this was saying, it was saying that people are basically going to freak out. And you would have a total freak out in society that you would have to plan around. Because why would you go to work? I mean, as they said, aliens run our reality. Or if like Steven Spielberg pulls off his mask and he's like, Disclosure Day, I have been an alien my whole life. And there you go, or something, or some weird thing like that. What does that mean for like your day-to-day functionality? And maybe that's some of what the Virgo stuff in this reading is about, is like, hey, don't forget your day-to-day tangible needs, even if stuff goes wild and this disclosure thing happens or something like it that challenges our core beliefs. Like you still have a body to take care of and clean and wash and feed and all of those things. Okay, and so this is where I think the Great Schism comes in, and this is the title of my thumbnail, was the Great Alien Schism, because this is, will, I guarantee, happen. If there is any kind of disclosure this year, there will be people that say it's false, it's a lie. And I tend to be skeptical of it. I'm just going to be totally honest. I'm sort of a skeptic around this stuff. I've always said, I want to have tea. Here's my black tea right now. If I'm having tea with a gray alien, then I'll start believing. That's kind of the camp I've been in. You know, if the government's telling me stuff, I'm a little bit wary of, you know, those narratives just from what I've seen in my lifetime about, you know, agendas in terms of propagating ideas in the society. But here's a Newsweek article that came out in 2024, and it was updated in 2025. But remember all of those drones? I think it was in New Jersey. And people were saying there was these major drone events, and people were like, is this an alien invasion? That was back in 2024. Well, Newsweek ran an article, and let me just read it. The recent surge of mysterious drone sightings across the United States has sparked a resurgence in the Project Bluebeam conspiracy theory, which claims global elites plan to fake an alien invasion. And I think this is where you might get the schism side, if there is a return to some kind of schism, where you'll have half the population saying, I don't believe it's real, and the other half saying, I believe it's real. It'll be like that movie, Don't Look Up, with Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Timothy Chalamet was in that. Really good movie. I really liked that one. I thought that was a greatly acted and very beautiful movie, actually. But, be prepared for that. And I don't think it has to be about disclosure. I think that this disclosure idea captures the vibe of what I think we'll be getting into this year, which is there could be splits in reality around belief and doctrine, where certain people will be acting based on their kind of doctrinal allegiances, and that's a big thing of what we're getting into here in 2026. And, I encourage you guys, and this is how I'm trying to play it, going back to this, and I'll just say it one more time, ground, get into your body. That's the best way to ground. Try not to get too caught up in the madness. And if you just ground in your physical body, this is where Vipassana meditation and whole schools of spirituality teach this. You stay grounded in your body as a method for sanity and a method for satisfaction during times of insanity, whether that's in your own mind or in the outer world. So, okay, that is the final slide. I think we still have the final card. So let's get that final card up and let us pull this final card, and then I'll come to a question or two before I close here today. But the final card is this one. It is where is it? Let me get it. Ooh, this is one of those cards in tarot that when you see it, it kind of is a big, heavy, dramatic card. And this is the middle decan of Libra, the Saturn-ruled decan of Libra. And there's that heartbreak, right? That crushing heartbreak that this card kind of evokes. When you read tarot, people, and the writings about this, and I've always loved this way of looking at the card, it is the idea that the mental formations, because this is air element, Libra is an air sign. It's ruled by Mercury, by triplicity. It's about our mind, ultimately. Any air sign is about the ideas. And ideas can break your heart. Ideas can break your heart, especially if you get too caught up in the beliefs. It's almost like we kind of crush our emotional body and crush our physical body if you're too in the mind. And I think that's the warning of this card, is almost like, hey, don't get too up in the mind. Don't get too logical or intellectual, because you may harm other parts of your being. And it's a kind of a warning about an imbalance of the air element. And we know this year, Pluto and Aquarius trine Uranus and Gemini. That's a great long-term cycle trigger with a lot of air element energy. I think this may be warning us, hey, don't get too lost in the news. Don't get too lost. And you're talking to a news junkie, a mundane astrologer news junkie. So I'm kind of talking to myself, I guess. But, we need to kind of balance out the information streams and maybe kind of put the phone down, okay? Or we may be setting ourselves up for heartbreak or pain or suffering. And, you see these images like last week in Iran. There's these fiery, explosive images. You've seen it all over the last 2 years since Pluto entered Aquarius. A big part of the transformations have been around, what's happened in Palestine and those heartbreaking images. But it's in the media flow, right in our hands, that we're seeing it. So there's a kind of air element side to the heartbreak. And, I'm not saying ignore anything that you see or ignore things that are happening, but I think we need to ground. And I think that's what this is telling us, is almost like if we don't get into our Virgo here, we're going to be suffering some heartbreak. And that might be one way to read this reading. So, okay, I'm going to come into some questions. I'm going to go right now to some questions. Your frequency disclosure will not change much. Let me see here. Any questions? I'm going to throw out just a comment here and just read one of these. This is from Truck X Elf. Disclosure will not change much. Belief is manufactured and malleable. The paradigm shift will be that there is no paradigm to shift. Yeah, I like that. I think that fits with the Three of Swords. That it's almost like if we try to, I don't know, get involved in the wars of the paradigm, or if we're going to get involved in the great schism doctrinal disputes, right, we might be setting ourselves up for heartbreak. I love the notion that the paradigm shift will be that there is no paradigm shift. Basically, I'm not going to get involved in another person's intellectual war or battle. I don't have to do that. It would only be defeating in a way to do that. And I think this is the idea, is that you win by not playing. So I really like that. And I do think in an age when there's so much driven by propaganda and psyop and all of that, excuse me, especially in a moment when, you know, nations are warring, right? We're basically awash in propaganda and psyop. And so I think that's the warning here. And I love what you had written about that, because I think that fits quite well. So, okay, let me see. I guess that we'll end it there. All right. So thank you guys. I really wish you a beautiful new moon in Capricorn today, and have a beautiful Pluto and Aquarius triggered week. Look for your mental breakthroughs and your innovative, fresh concepts to guide you and guide your life and guide your world. And we will talk soon.